And on top of that, in conjunction with this Operation Bootstrap Economic Plan was this sterilization program called La Operación. So Puerto Rican women have a bunch of kids, but if they're working manufacturing and we want this to be a touristy area, it's going to be too overpopulated. Basically, they were like, okay, well, let's run a sterilization operation as well, which was significantly funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. Look up who has holdings in Quanta Services, by the way, one of the owners of FEMA. I'll give you a hint. It's BlackRock. So the Rockefeller Foundation funded the sterilization campaign called La Operación, and by 1982, like a third of the island's women were sterilized completely. They were testing population control before they did it on the American mainland. Puerto Rico's a testing island for pretty much everything that we're experiencing in America. I think we get it like 30 years after them, maybe even shorter than that. But my point is that they were testing birth control on Puerto Rican women, and they were giving them such high doses that some of them were dying. None of it was ever fucking investigated because it was part of this government operation. And it worked, because now Puerto Rico's got an inverted pyramid population, and I think they did the same thing to America.
Welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you taking the time to come on with us. Sounds like it's going to be a two-parter. I think we'll probably talk about one thing. That's it, dude. There it is. Now it's a show. That's not drugs. Actually, I'm not going to say that. It's over-the-counter drugs. That's right. Yeah, nothing harder than Vicks. You know what I mean? So, Gary, tell me about yourself. I know you got Street Gonzo, a little street journalism. It's a riot. I love it. How'd you get into that? What's your background? All that stuff for the peeps that may be unfamiliar and are just now watching you.
So, I've done journalism in some capacity for the past, 8 years or so, and then I got into Street Gonzo. Was a collaborative creation between me and my producer, my partner, Joel Hodge-Benner, and we met at Drinking Bros, and it became this. It was what I was just talking to Chris about. Was that it was like a flyer. It was supposed to be one season, and we were just making a YouTube show as a pitch, basically, to see if we could do it, and then have all the content to pitch to streaming services like Netflix and HBO and Hulu and stuff. And then it turned into Joel and I making documentaries now, specifically today to talk about the Puerto Rican power crisis. But there's a lot of stuff we have that we're working on. We went to Dearborn, Michigan with a friend of mine, and that's.
I bet that's nuts.
Yeah,
bro. Dearborn and Minnesota, right? Wherever the fuck they're, Minneapolis. Yeah, those two cities. It just feels like there's like a fifth column inside that city of Muslim invaders. Essentially, is how it feels.
As it were.
Yeah, a fifth pillar. Yeah, whichever. Fifth column is like a traditional phrase, but yeah.
Where's that term come from?
So fifth column actually comes from the Spanish Civil War. Originally, as from my understanding, is that there was this belief that there was a group of people inside the city. I don't remember which city, if it was Barcelona or Madrid, that would essentially help the people going in to liberate the city that they already existed from the inside. And so there was 4 columns of troops, and there was the invisible fifth column on the inside of the city that would basically be there to help already. And so the idea of me saying fifth column for Minneapolis or Dearborn, Michigan, is that it's this group of people that's in waiting to destroy from the inside. They're starting to take over governance, and there's people now in law enforcement there, in the education board. It's like a silent takeover.
That's even funnier, because the reference I thought you were making was the 5 pillars of Islam, which the 5th pillar is jihad.
Oh,
so
no.
That's the reference I thought you were making. So that's
but that works now too. No, yeah, that totally works. But no, fifth column is this. It's a phrase used to describe an element of people on the inside, essentially, that are there, to fuck things up and meet up with the regular troops once they get inside. And so they sort of Trojan horse themselves, as it were.
Yeah, I was surprised by the conversations that we had when we were there.
Really?
Yeah. The people that we spoke with, we got a lot of different we had an eclectic group of key interviews. We had a Palestinian Christian. We had a missionary, really, a guy who kind of traveled the world as a Christian missionary who was maybe, I don't know if Zionist is the right word, but he had a different take than the other Christian, because the Palestinian Christian, he had family members killed by the IDF. So there was, I mean, we got every angle, but we also spoke with some Shia Muslims, and honestly, man, one of the most shocking things I've ever heard somebody say in an interview.
Really?
Yeah, he actually said, and we can go into this more when we do another episode, 'cause I think it'll, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, and
very interested,
maybe you know more about you know, the history of Islam and stuff like that than I do. He said, while we were talking to him, I said something about, you know, America's going soft, and I think that a lot of Christians are sort of spineless in a certain capacity, at least the ones that are church going. And he was like, well, yeah, maybe you're right. But he was like supportive of the Christians. It was really interesting. He said that he likes Jesus, and he thinks that Christians will get into heaven, and that he also said that he thinks that he agrees that America's going soft, and that a lot of conservatives have ideology aligned with some of these Muslims, like, you know, death penalty for rapists and murderers. And then the most shocking thing that I've probably heard in an interview in a long time was that he said that he thinks that there are forces within America that are trying to basically tell the white man that they can't have an identity.
I mean, I don't disagree with that notion, essentially. Right. Yeah.
It was really interesting that he said that, because that means that it's that evident that there's a sort of a psychological warfare and in the cultural ethos going against like white men, which I think most white guys that don't hate themselves would agree with that. And the more obvious it gets, the more I have like my Hispanic buddies, you know, like Mexicans and Puerto Ricans, and like one of my little brothers is black. And a lot of my black friends are saying the same thing. They're like, man, the news really hates white men, really. It just was interesting to hear that from a Muslim, dude, which I wouldn't have expected, because I feel like the news makes it seem that Muslims and Christians are supposed to hate each other.
Well, it's really interesting, dude, because what I picked up out of that is like, yeah, you were making the point that it's like, hey, we all kind of get the talking points now. And so to even hear it like said out loud like this. But to me, that also says that the news is doing such a poor job now of laundering the talking points without it being so on the nose that it's just becoming like a cultural joke, where now it's just, you can just say it and everybody's like, oh yeah. I mean, we basically get it, you know?
Well, I've from my generation, millennials I blame for a lot of this stuff. Millennials really used the whole oppressor oppress thing as an argument for 15 years, you know, while we were in our 20s on into our 30s and late 30s. Like, I'm almost 40. And this is something that white people, specifically white men, have been told for quite a long time now, is that they're the root cause of the majority of the problems around the world. You know, the United States seems to be the only country that anybody continually talks about its use of chattel slavery as a way to build its country, when almost every country around the world, I mean, every country around the world has had slavery, but every country, and there are more slaves today than there were during the height of the transatlantic slave trade right now. But, you know, the United States isn't the only one that has had that issue. But the talking point is that it's white guys, it's white men that did this.
You know, it doesn't include. Is.
I mean, I do know why that is. I think that the majority of the educators that came out of the civil rights movements tended to ascribe to a bunch of neo-Marxist belief and thought from Europe, and those guys eventually went from being college graduates into the academic world as college professors and made their way into politics and things like that too. And then, you know, these people eventually were the ones that were the drivers behind public education and public TV, things like PBS, and this sort of thought proliferated from the kids who consumed it, who later became adults, who then internalized and believed it. And then you had a generation of people who were self-censoring and hated themselves and then hated men on top of that. It was a whole patriarchal thing that's tied into it. But at the end of the day, it's still an oppressor-oppressed idea that has come into play, yeah.
I mean, more generally speaking, I would say that when you look at the statistics of slave ownership in America, 1.4% of total white Americans owned slaves, right? So if they can blame it on all white people, it dilutes the population of people that owned slaves, which was largely bankers and lawyers and the people that developed the oligopolies that now run the media apparatus. And you can trace all that shit back through, like, the slave ships and the ledgers to, like, Wells Fargo and other banks
that's true,
largely still exist. But my point is that when I was saying, like, you know why they do that, it's the same old shit. It's look over here while this hand's, you know, finger blasting your wife. And I think the same thing is happening with what's going on up in Dearborn, is that the problem up there isn't really as dramatic as... It's different than what people are saying it is, and it's probably something that can be mitigated more so than exacerbated.
That's an interesting idea, mitigated versus exacerbation. Do you think that the people, I mean, from your experience when you were there, because I've never been there, so you have firsthand knowledge, anything I have is second or third hand sources. The people that you talk to that are maybe immigrants that are traditionally Muslim that live in Dearborn, would you say that those people believe in the idea of America, or do they
say they do?
They say they do?
They say they do. Whether that's true or not is to be determined, but I think a lot of them do. I'm inclined to largely believe what they were saying. I think I'm a relatively good judge of character. Sure. I mean, the guy that at that mosque, one of the mosques we went to, he had no reason to basically tell me that the I mean, dude, he's going against the entire ideology that's been taught in the ivory tower for the past 30, 40, 50 years. He has no reason to tell me that the white man has someone preventing him from developing an ethno-identity or a cultural identity. It was just very interesting. The only reason that he would potentially do that is, you know, to try to convert me to Islam, which... I don't think that it's not an ethno-religion, so it's that I don't think that correlates. I mean, obviously, this guy was a Shia Muslim, and Sunni Muslims are responsible for like 85% of the world's terror attacks, other than probably the CIA. But if you take that in consideration,
well, I mean, aren't they together? You know what I mean?
Well, all right. Well, now I'm gonna sleep with one eye open. Speaking of the CIA, you know, Puerto Rico is an interesting place, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about. And we can talk about Dearborn more. I got to gather my thoughts more on that,
dude.
Because the
Part 2, Dearborn, the interview.
I was going to ask you, because a lot of people are saying that this Jake Lang guy was like a provocateur. He went in there to drum up kind of all of this, you know, anti-Christian, anti-white sentiment or whatever, and he got his video clips out of it, even going so far as to walk into the city council meeting, I think.
He burned a Quran too, didn't he?
He tried to. I don't think that he was able to. I think somebody slapped it out of his hand before it was able to happen. But yeah, he pissed a lot of people off. So the stunt seems to have worked. But I'd be interested to see when we talk about it next week, if we get a chance to see if you were able to talk to anybody about that on the ground and get two sides of that story.
We were there before the day we left was the day before that happened.
Oh, no, the timeline did. Interesting.
So
yeah. Like I said, my thoughts on that whole situation are that do I think the Muslim culture is compatible with what is modern-day Western culture? Probably not, but modern-day Western culture is very... Excuse me. It's very...
Bless you.
It's not Christian, so it's not that it's not... I don't know, man. like I said, I haven't totally
Sure.
digested that
we don't have to keep
experience.
beating that drum by all means.
Yeah. Well, I am interested in Puerto Rico, and I actually spent some time looking it up when you were before we came on, and because I had some questions too that I wanted to sort of answer to myself about the question of Puerto Rican statehood and whether or not like that would assist with what's going on there. I'm just kind of curious, like what your take is on that problem.
Well, the issue with the Puerto Rican power grid is a problem that is by far worse than I think anyone on the U.S. mainland that hasn't been there realizes, number one. Number two, I think it's a problem that not a lot of people actually know about, largely because of the language barrier. A lot of the news coverage is in Spanish, obviously, and 78% of American mainland speaks English only. So it's not something that a lot of people know about. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't even realize that Puerto Rico is full of U.S. citizens. In fact, they're all U.S. citizens.
Right.
And a surprising number of people don't know that. On top of that, I would also say that people don't realize how poor it is. It's you know, if you look up the median income for a single resident, it's like $18,000 a year. And more or less, the problem is that there's a long way I can explain this, and there's a short way. The problem is the fact that Puerto Rico relies on federal funding to boost its economy, and a lot of the previously agriculture-based economy was removed and replaced with manufacturing, tourism, stuff like that. Pharmaceutical factories and stuff were in there as well, like pharmaceutical manufacturing. But the point is Puerto Rico largely relies on the U.S. because of the Jones Act and other things as well. So they can't just there's no money, there's no opportunity, so they can't just fix it themselves. They're basically forced to be reliant on the United States. And Obama created this financial board in 2006 with the Promesa Act that essentially created a shadow government for the island, and that financial board controls the entire economy of the island. They monitor and regulate all the finances, so they control the money, so they control the island. They don't have to, they can literally supersede laws that are legislated and signed. They can
That's fucked up.
They can do whatever they want. And on top of that, they are working in conjunction with a bunch of Wall Street law firms and New York lawyers, and a number of the people from the financial board, 8 of them to be specific, are also from New York. So really, the problem with the Puerto Rican power grid is that it's a gang of New Yorkers that flew down to Puerto Rico and took positions of political power, and then used that political power to then extract all the $2 billion of Puerto Rican tax money and ship it back to New York. To be honest, dude, it is the biggest. It's the biggest plundering of the island since the conquistadors took all the gold back in the early 16th century. I did the math on this actually, and they took something close to $5 billion worth of gold from Puerto Rico between 1505 and 1511, something like that.
Holy shit.
And the numbers that I've uncovered are about $2 billion worth of expenses from the financial board to these lawyers, and including administrative fees for them. And that's just what I found. So
Right.
these guys might be close to pulling off the biggest pirate heist in Puerto Rican history.
Dude,
was that the short answer?
Yeah.
I would love to hear what the long answer is and what the weeds are on this and how this happened, because what you just said is extremely intriguing. It sounds almost like a hostile board takeover of like a company in a way, but it's a takeover of a country. And I'm really interested to hear how Puerto Rico and the United States wound up in that relationship where there's a group of people who are financiers in New York City or New York or wherever, that
No, the board is on the island, man.
The board is on the island. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So
no, when I said they flew down there and took over, they
They literally
flew down there, got on this board. Dude, one of the fucking people, the founding executive director, Natalie Jaresko, however the fuck you pronounce her name, she used to be the finance minister of Ukraine. You know, the other place that's been embroiled in multiple high-level corruption scandals involving the energy infrastructure, as well as the military. Dude, Puerto Rico is the most corrupt place that I've ever investigated. And I've never, investigated like the fucking Congo or something, but it's pretty bad.
Right.
Do Puerto Ricans have any type of self-governance whatsoever at this point, to what you're describing to us?
Well, it's interesting you would say that, because it sure as fuck sounds like they don't. Given that a financial board runs their entire island. Okay, so look, here's the long answer. So, oh man, where do I want to start this? I don't know the history of Puerto Rican colonialism, and I don't know exactly how the U.S. got a hold of Puerto Rico. And I'm also not going to be somebody to say that the U.S. is responsible for everything that happened in Puerto Rico, or that, the Spanish are evil for plundering the island. I mean, yeah, that's not good, but I don't think it needs to be said anymore. It's been hundreds of years, and what I think is important is that the people that are fucking the island now is who I want to talk about. Yeah, and that would be the Financial Oversight and Management Board, which is referred to on the island as La Junta, that just is Spanish for the board, and they are essentially power pirates. They were a financial board that was created by the PROMESA Act, which Obama signed with congressional approval in 2006, because the entire island of Puerto Rico was $72 billion in debt. It's funny when I say that. I'm like, oh god, dude, it really is billion. It's insane.
With a B, yeah.
Yeah. So Puerto Rico was $72 billion in debt, and Obama signed this law, the PROMESA Act, a promise to Puerto Rico, economic stability, blah, blah, bullshit, talking out the side of his mouth. And that basically allowed Puerto Rico to file something called Title III bankruptcy, which I still don't have a complete understanding of, because it's not normal. It's not Chapter 11, And that was in 2016. And the island of Puerto Rico's power company, the Electric Authority, PREPA, Puerto Rican Electric Power Authority, they declared bankruptcy in 2017. Now, it is 2025 now, which means they've been in bankruptcy proceedings for 8 years, which means that the Financial Oversight and Management Board has facilitated the single longest municipal bankruptcy in American history. And in doing so, they've also delayed all the FEMA funds that Trump, as well as Biden, have provided to the island. In 2020, Trump provided the largest FEMA expenditure to the island ever. It was $13 billion. And at some point after that, Biden also provided a couple more $1 billion. And I think only about less than a quarter of that money has actually been dispersed. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is going to be that the FEMA reimbursement model in Puerto Rico means that they have to spend the money in order to get reimbursed for it, but the fucking island's bankrupt, so obviously, what are they going to pull money out of their ass? No, they have no money, so they have no money to spend, and given that the island's so financially fucked and there's not a lot of opportunity, there's not a lot of capital investment there, and like I was saying earlier, the island relies on federal funding to basically operate. And basically the power grid was in 2021, a new company was formed. It is a Canadian-American joint venture, half owned by Quanta Services out of Houston, which is a contracting services company, and then half owned by a Canadian utility company called ATCO. And they got together and created created this company called Luma Energy, which is universally hated on the island because they haven't done their job, which was their sole purpose. The sole purpose of Luma was to repair and modernize the transmission and distribution aspects of the Puerto Rican power grid. And that hasn't happened at all. In fact, a lot of Puerto Ricans are saying that the power grid has gotten a lot worse. And there's there's arbitrary fees attached to bills, like they're it's insane, dude. There's you get your electric bill, it shows you what the bill is, and here in America we got a couple of miscellaneous fees that we shouldn't be paying. Obviously, they've got like 10, and the bills are just like outrageous, and they use estimated electric usage. Anyways, the point is that Luma's not done a good job. People are pretty dissatisfied with them, and so there's I think Luma was basically created to come in and make the people that run things more money, to be quite honest with you.
Right.
And that's because prices have gone up, price per kilowatt energy or whatever the fucking way they explain it is. That's gone up while electric, the outages are still happening and the grid is antiquated. It was built in like the 50s and 60s, and then in the 80s, the PREPA union was like sabotaging the power grid because the unions wanted to make money, and if they weren't getting their collective bargaining agreements, they were fucking blowing up a substation or something, and there were riots and all sorts of crazy shit. And more or less, Luma's just not done their job. In fact, we were in a neighborhood, like a poorer neighborhood, driving through, and we heard somebody screaming, and I was like, "What the fuck was that?" I look over, and there's this old man, and he's like hurt his back. So we stopped. We get out. We go and talk to him. His back's all fucked up. He doesn't want to call the ambulance because he's fucking old school, salt of the earth. He's like, I don't want to go to the fucking hospital, And then I'm like, hey, so what was going on? And I think he was working on like a heater or something, or I don't know. The point is, I asked him about what he feels about Luma, and my luck is this guy he was the electrician for his entire neighborhood because they don't trust Luma to come out and fix the electric problems.
Holy crap.
So this guy's like an old man with a bad back, and and dude, I fucking love this guy. He was so old school. He reminded me of like my grandpa. He was like, he's like, they're fucking pigs. Fuck them.
Awesome.
It was great. Yeah. But anyways, the point is, Luma's fucked. They were the replacement for PREPA, which was the previous government-owned power entity. Luma's this private Canadian-American joint energy venture that's largely also been a failure. And they've been involved in a bunch of corruption, too. 6 months after they took over control, the CEO, Wayne Stensby, got an arrest warrant sent out for him by a San Juan judge, Superior Court judge, because he was failing to provide documents to the lawmakers there. And when I heard that, I thought, what? And then I looked into some more stuff, and there's a bunch of lawsuits against FEMA for a litany of things. And on top of that, it makes sense why they're overcharging customers, because it is very possible, and I say possible because I don't want to get sued. So, you can read
Allegedly.
between the lines.
Yeah.
Allegedly. Prior to Luma, the government-owned power company, PREPA, they were in a class action lawsuit for overcharging customers in what's called an oil cartel scheme, where they were buying shitty, basically fuel oil and overcharging everybody. So there's stuff like that peppered throughout every single aspect of Puerto Rico. Every corner you turn around, there's somebody basically legally robbing you, and they're fucked. It's heartbreaking because they're U.S. citizens. I mean, they're falling into third world conditions, and these are Americans. They should be living like Americans, and it pisses me off. I think that's why I got so invested. I mean, not to sound like a dickhead, but if this was somewhere that wasn't part of the United States, I wouldn't be pushing the issue as much. But
right,
to me, Puerto Rico to me, I think it should be a state. If that's what the people there want, you know, it's obviously we live in a constitutional republic, so I don't think we should be forcing anybody to do anything they don't want to do. And there are
Congress have to vote on that for sure.
Well, yeah, and you know, I think they've voted. I think Puerto Rico's voted to become a state before, and it's been blocked for whatever reason, which I think is wrong. But
yeah, it's partisan politics because the Republicans are worried that Puerto Ricans are going to vote primarily Democrats, and then they're giving the Democrats a leg up, and then Democrats say that Puerto Ricans are primarily Catholic, and so they're probably going to vote more conservative. So we don't want to do it because they want to help the other side essentially rather than helping people, which just goes to show you that politicians only give a fuck about the bottom line of their party and they don't care about people. So
yeah, they're a bunch of cocksuckers, dude. You know, when we were there, one of the final members of the financial board, Andrew Biggs, he was fired by Trump. And essentially, Trump cleared house with the entire financial board because they didn't do their job. You know, they dragged out this bankruptcy. They spent $2 billion on lawyers. They didn't fix the power grid. I mean, I would say that they did. I think they did negotiate some of the actual islands' bankruptcy proceedings. They did sort of fix some of that, but I mean, the issue with the PREPA bankruptcy is that there's these bondholders that want to get paid, right? And the whole reason, so this is why I was saying this is a long answer, and I'm a tangential
you're good,
rant,
dude.
you know, but
we're a long
basically
podcast.
What happened was these bondholders want to get paid, and some of them are school teachers or nurses or small business owners, but there's also vulture funds that have bought some of these for pennies on the dollar to try to make their money back. And there's, you know, they want a successful restructuring where they're going to get paid out of that, which is unfortunate because that's delaying people's ability to live, to go back to a normal life. And then there's some of the law firms that are working on the bankruptcy, like McKinsey and Company, which is out of New York, headquartered in New York, actually. They had a subsidiary, I think it was MIO, one of their little investment branches, that fucking had bonds, that owned bonds, which is a conflict of interest, because then
right,
the people that own them are the ones negotiating the restructuring.
Right.
It's crazy. That's illegal, dude.
Right.
So anyways, nothing happened to them. And the reason that this even happened in the first place was because if you go all the way back, and I don't remember what year it was, because I learned all this from a lawyer named Alfonso Fernandez, who I'm going to preeminently say RIP, because he is definitely going to get killed for everything that he told us, as will I probably. I'm not even kidding, dude. There's a lot of dead bodies connected to Puerto Rico. And the conspiracy. I mean, Epstein had bank accounts there. Epstein Island was like a 40-minute flight. And, you know, there's some bankers, and a guy investigating investment banking was killed there, and crypto millionaire was killed there. And we can get into that. Just remind me, because I have a bad memory. But basically, this lawyer, Alfonso Fernandez, the next person on the body count, the Puerto Rico body count, is he told me that all these government entities were taken off the ability to declare bankruptcy in like the 80s or 90s, and that was done so that they could become more marketable, and meaning a better investment. And, you know, who do you think was behind that? Investment bankers? Maybe.
No,
not the bankers. So yeah, the investment bankers and lawyers and the governor probably at the time, and you know, business as usual, unfortunately. So yeah, they were taken out of the ability to declare bankruptcy, so then they couldn't declare bankruptcy, so now they're in this weird Title III, in these Title III bankruptcy proceedings. And then if we go even further back, the core of the issue is that there's a declining population in Puerto Rico, as there is in the United States, and all of the most productive, youngest, hardest working people are leaving the island to come to America. Where do most Puerto Ricans live in America?
Florida
And New York City. And in fact, I think there might be more Puerto Ricans in New York than in Puerto Rico.
Maybe.
Fact check that for me. But anyways, the point is, the core of the issue is that there's a declining population. And they've developed sort of this inverted pyramid with most of the populace over the age of 50. And on top of that, there's no economic opportunities. There's not a lot of jobs. 40% of people are on food stamps. 47% of people receive welfare. Median income's like $17,000. They're actually super poor. Puerto Rico is a place where food stamps actually are necessary so that your kids don't fucking die. And obviously that creates conditions for crime, because you're if you don't have anything and you can't survive, you're going to commit crimes, which I wholeheartedly support. To be honest with you, I like committing crimes myself, as long as they're against the right people. Which unfortunately, the worst crimes in Puerto Rico are being committed against the poorest people. Right. And oh, hey, by the way, before I move on, that $2 billion they've paid out to those lawyers, it was all taken out of Puerto Rican taxpayer dollars. I just want to emphasize that real quick. Think about that. This is an island that doesn't. A lot of people don't have. They don't pay. They're not paying a lot of taxes because they're poor. They're like way below the poverty line. So the people that are able to make enough money to survive, they're like, hey, here's your money. Goodbye. Fuck you. It's crazy.
I was just saying, at that rate, it almost sounds like all of the money, $2 billion. That's a fuckload of money. I'm interested. You said that one of these people had like ties back to Ukraine and their energy infrastructure. I want to know how much you know about all of these people that sat on this board, because
I know
where all of these things tie back. These people, they tie into the private equity here in the United States. They tie into investment banking, all these things. Crypto, I think, for the most part, is just a way to launder money, in my opinion. I'm just kind of curious what you know about these people individually and where their ties go back into.
So you got people like David Brownstein out of New York. You got people like Martin J. Beinenstock, who is the lead attorney at Proskauer Rose out of New York. You got McKinsey & Company, consulting firm out of New York. You've got Robert Mujica, the executive director of the board, out of New York. Natalie Jaresko, or Jaresko, I don't know how to say it. Natalie Jaresko out of Chicago, arguably more corrupt than New York. And then obviously she was connected to Ukraine, which is way more corrupt. I mean, that place is just a place to launder money.
Yeah, has been.
You've got the Arthur Gonzalez. He was a judge out of New York, and basically there's a bunch of other members of the financial board that are also all out of New York. Not to be monotonous here, but it's insane. And then fun fact, Arthur Gonzalez and Martin J. Beinenstock, think about this. Arthur Gonzalez is on the financial board. He's one of the chair. Arthur Gonzalez is one of the chairs of the financial board that has hired Martin J. Beinenstock, who is one of the lead attorneys for Proskauer Rose handling the bankruptcy negotiations. And both of them, at one point in time, were both involved in the Enron case, which...
Oh, more energy.
Arthur Gonzalez was the judge, and Martin J. Beinenstock was the lead attorney for Enron in the bankruptcy proceedings. And guess where they had that case? New York. So, yeah, it's insane. There's a lot of other stuff. I'm racking my brain right now. I'm operating at like 60% capacity because I've had pneumonia.
You're good, dude. Now the McKinsey is a. I actually have a book. It's called When McKinsey Comes to Town that I've been meaning to read for a while, but it's about literally McKinsey, like the one you're talking about. And now
McKinsey & Company, the consulting firm?
Yeah, it's called When McKinsey Comes to Town. It's about another. I think it's about like general corruption with McKinsey. But it's been sitting on my shelf over here for a while. I've just been reading a lot of other stuff, like mostly like political philosophy shit. And now I'm absolutely going to read that book this week, and it'll be done. I am very intrigued to learn more about them, but specifically this stuff with this financial board and them being in New York. My question for you is, obviously there's massive corruption going on. These people are tied into all these other cases. It sounds like they've perfected their art, right, through big scandals like Enron all the way back in through to Puerto Rico and all the things that they've been doing forever. These guys have had to have some sort of protection at the political level for a long time. I'm just kind of curious, like how much about that do you know? Like who are the politicians? I mean, they've got to be from not Texas, but New York, that are supporting these guys and giving them, the shield to keep up with this shit, right? But like, do you know anything about that? The politicians that are involved with this?
With the exception of the actual executive director, Mujica, all the other members are appointed by, Senate majority whips and House, whatever the fucks, all those fucking bullshit.
Just like
titles.
Implied consent, essentially, that they're just going to do this shit, and that by passively appointing these people is a passive admission that you're just going to allow it to happen, is basically what that sounds like. So
yeah, I mean, that's one way to look at it. I think that's probably pretty accurate. The financial board itself was created by Obama and Obama's Congress. So if I was to look up who was involved with the signing of that act, we could probably determine who is responsible.
Yeah.
I haven't done the research in terms of the politicians, because to me, all politicians are pretty much the same at this point. I was kind of surprised that Trump fired the whole board.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much everybody we talked to, even people that don't really like Trump, were like, yeah, that's good. But what's
the alternative?
He can't fire Mujica.
Yeah.
Robert Mujica is the executive director of the board. He gets paid $625,000 plus expenses per year, and his salary is determined by the board that he runs.
It's just in.
Yeah, so they've all been fired. So now he can't be fired, essentially. And I'm just curious what's going to happen, because in my opinion, Mujica should be fired. And the bankruptcy needs to be resolved immediately, because it's still going to take 5 to 10 years to modernize that grid, which hasn't been able to get done, even though Trump, again, sent the largest FEMA expenditure ever. And then Biden sent a bunch of money, too. I mean, that's what's...
Do you even know where that money went specifically? It went to those guys?
What do you mean?
Like the money that was sent.
The FEMA money?
FEMA.
It's just no, it's just sitting there.
It's locked because they have to spend the money to get reimbursed, like you're saying.
Yeah. And so money by FEMA money, when I say sent, let me explain. There's a difference between being obligated and being dispersed. So the money FEMA obligates to something is, it says this chunk of money has been obligated for this specific purpose.
Yeah.
But until it's spent, you know what I mean? Like until the financial boards... Okay, maybe I should have explained this a little bit more clearly. The financial board, they approve all budgets. Every single contract on the island of Puerto Rico over $10 million, and anything that's regarding the power grid is going to be very expensive. The financial board has to approve it. So...
The ones that were fired.
Yes. So they just haven't approved much, and a lot of those assets have been frozen because of the bankruptcy proceedings. So basically... all this money that's been obligated is just kind of sitting there. Like, imagine a bunch of money just sitting in a warehouse, and they're waiting for some contractors or some company to go fix a power line, and then they say, all right, cool, here's a pallet of money to replace what you just did.
Is there any way to prove that all of those earmarked funds are indeed frozen and where they're supposed to be? I mean, I know we're talking about a financial audit at this point, but everything that you've been describing, it's the same kind of con that gets played out every single time you see financial disasters, and USAID was doing this quite a bit, and everybody kind of saw what came out of that with the whole Doge thing. But FEMA, it happens all the time, where it's like you see hurricane hit, and then all the contractors rush down there, all the NGOs rush down there because they know Big Daddy government's going to back up that dump truck with dollar bills, like you're saying. And then a lot of the times, these NGOs or blah, 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 all these people, like they'll take the money and then they'll run, and the people are left in the same position they were, except worse now because now my house is flooded, right? But it sounds like in this particular instance, Luma figured out the con, and they've gotten in there, and unfortunately for Puerto Ricans, out of sight, out of mind to most of the people in the mainland that haven't realized that they've been living in a post-disaster world now for this long, because the power goes out every single day. And here you've got this board that's basically standing in the middle and is obstructing all of these federal funds that you're saying is earmarked but unspent. But now what's making, like, my brain immediately goes to, can we prove that money is earmarked and frozen? Because why else? I know you talked about the bonds and all of those other things.
What do you mean?
As in your example was, imagine a warehouse with pallets of cash sitting there that are locked away, and it's like you can't touch it. Like, what's the likelihood if you were to do a financial audit and go open up the doors of the warehouse that it's like, $200 bills on the floor?
Well, 100%, because I mean, when the Trump admin announced that they obligated this money, I mean, it's all there's not specifics until a project is approved, I imagine. I guess I don't know the inner workings of the processes that the financial board does, but we don't need to audit it. It's already there. Those people should be in fucking jail, honestly. And here's the thing: when the Trump admin announces, "Hey, we have $13 billion that FEMA's we've obligated to this project of the power grid," and I think 11 billion were for energy infrastructure and 2 billion were for 9 billion were for PREPA specific energy infrastructure, and then the rest was for education stuff, because the power grid affects
everything.
Dude, the kids can't have school if there's no power.
Right.
It's a fucking island. It's hot as hell. They're like passing out from the heat. Right. So, I get what you're saying. Yeah, an audit, sure, that'd be great, but I don't think it's necessary. There's an announcement that says the funds are there. The funds haven't been used because of the bankruptcy. So fuck yourself,
Well, you said, so Trump fired the board. What's the next step? Like you said, that even people that don't like him said that it's a good move. Like what is the move from that point? Like was this him firing them because of how corrupt it was? Was it a plan to replace it with something better and hopefully vote out Mojica? Or like what was the plan here? Do you know? Well,
that's a good question. I don't actually know what their plan is. I should ask Laura Loomer that, because I'm doing her podcast soon, and
no shit.
Yeah, because
she'd be the person to ask, man.
She was tweeting about this. Well, yes, I just saw a thing about she was at the White House in the press room where the Washington Post used to be, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I know she's kind of tight with Trump, so maybe I'll ask her what is the move, because in my opinion, Robert Mujica should be moved immediately. And then we should use congressional authority to investigate every single law firm and all the financial board members to see if they got kickbacks. That's where the audit comes in that you're talking about.
Yeah,
well, and then I can already hear people like, because it's like, where's Trump from? New York.
New York, yeah.
New York, yeah.
Well, to Matt, Trump didn't, as far as I know, Trump did not appoint. Dude, you know what? Let me Google it. I don't think Trump ever appointed any FOMB members.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily like making any assumptions or accusations. I was more so saying that would get in his way of doing anything because he's from New York. So there's automatically going to be that espousement of corroboration, right? Or collaboration, not corroboration.
Okay, I was wrong. What?
He appointed two.
Well, shit. He appointed two and reappointed one, and two of them were people that he fired. I guess I overlooked that.
Interesting. No, that is interesting
because I can't be perfect.
No, not at all, man. I mean, you're doing really, really hard work on its face anyway. And like you said, this is a dangerous thing. You're talking about investment bankers. Like, what's a profession that is? There's not many professions older than banker. So and this is a thing that's cost a lot of people their lives over the thousands of years of human existence on this planet. So, but I mean, the thing about Trump firing the board is really interesting to me because. You can't just fire a board and then leave like the CEO. Like there's like on like the regular scale here, right? There's a fiduciary responsibility first and foremost, like as a board that would be responsible to somebody. So if you're firing like a board of people and then you're leaving the CEO who can't be fired because there's no board, like what's the plan here? That almost sounds like you're making it easier to enable corruption if you don't do something by effectively removing the only mechanism to depose that person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think that the reason that he fired them was because they're essentially compromised and they weren't going to vote out Mujica anyways. But look, in my
that's
opinion,
what I'm hoping is I'm getting at it. I'm hoping he does that. So it's like, what's the game plan?
Well, it's obviously a political move in some capacity, which whenever I think about Trump doing something, who I have very mixed opinions on, by the way, whenever I think about him doing something, I always think that he's thinking of press, basically, because I'd say he might be, with the exception of someone like Kanye West, he might be the best at manipulating the press of, like...
I agree. Absolutely. He does a wonderful job. He uses negative press better than anybody I've ever seen as well, too, which is more of an art than just using the press, by the way.
Well, it's in hindsight, it's fucking simple. Nobody trusts the news. Get the people that nobody trusts to talk shit to you. Now people trust you.
Right.
Yeah.
Duh. That's like saying let's say there's somebody that doesn't like the police and you're trying to convince them
I know him.
that we should have firearms. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, guns are bad. Oh, so you only think the police should have guns. And then they're like, well, maybe you're right. But that's because people are dumb as fuck, dude.
Sure.
Nobody's thinking long term about any of this stuff. They're like, oh, Trump fired the financial board.
Yeah.
Well, he's gonna save the day. Well, there's a lot more going into this than that. I mean, I'm not saying that he's trying to hollow out Puerto Rico any more than the previous guy, and maybe I actually kind of feel like he's going to try to help fix the power grid. Is it because he loves Puerto Ricans?
No.
I don't know. Is it because he knows that if he fixes the power grid, they're going to vote for him? If he tries to go for a third term, they're going to vote for somebody that's in his political agenda? Certainly. But in my opinion, it's means to an end. Do it. If he's going to fix the power grid because it's going to get Puerto Ricans to vote for him, fucking do it. That situation's dire. That's how I feel about it. I mean, a lot of other Puerto Ricans are, and more power to them. They have the more anti-colonial sentiment. The gringo go home movement, the get the fuck out of our place. We don't even want to be part of the United States. What do I think the ratio of that is? It's much smaller than the people that are either neutral or want to become a state, but it exists.
Well, I'll put it this
certainly.
way. I mean, who could blame them for wanting to be completely independent at this point, right?
Dude.
If they were their own country. I mean, and then the risk there, obviously, that politicians are going to look at is say, well, slamming the door on America opens the door for all these other countries, and Puerto Rico is right on the doorstep of the United States, so there's that risk too. So, like, the United States is never going to let that happen. It's kind of like why I'm like trying to why I'm trying to talk about this from both angles, right? Like, it's a good thing to fire all these corrupt pieces of shit, but like, to what end, right?
Yeah.
The other, because there's two perspectives here, that you're firing them because you're going to replace them with somebody better who's going to get rid of this person, or there's the other mechanism, which is firing all these people who had the ability to get rid of this other person, which in effect sort of cements that person who's the real problem in that spot until they are replaced, right? So like, I don't think Trump is that evil of a person to like do something that blatantly obviously evil to do something like that. So I feel like he's got to have some sort of plan. I mean, and to your point, it would be the best thing that anybody could do, a president could do. Biden could have done this, Trump first time could have done this, right? Obama could have if he wanted to, is to show up land on the fucking beaches with the Army Corps of Engineers and whoever the fuck else and go in there and just do the fucking thing. And then you would have the eternal gratitude of a bunch of people who, I looked up your question. Florida has about 200,000 more Puerto Ricans than New York. They are like right there. So it's, yeah, it's almost not even, you know what I mean? Like I guess on a given holiday, it could go either way, you know, depending on where they're traveling.
So what that's my point is that, you know, obviously Puerto Ricans can't vote for the president. So when I say that they're voting for him, I'm talking about by proxy in New York or in Florida.
Yeah.
The people that live in the mainland.
Which matters. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's more on the mainland than on the island itself. So, you know, also, in a perfect world, I think I actually would support the complete dissolution of the board, like completely get rid of it. But then the bondholders aren't reimbursed, and the bankruptcy is not going to get fixed, and it is sort of a colonial sentiment having that financial board there. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody that's been following politics that a big government Democrat implemented something like that. But also, I don't think it's realistic to get rid of the board, at least not at this point in time. They need that fucking, the PREPA bankruptcy needs to be totally resolved. And it has to be done quickly. Otherwise, I mean, dude, I actually, outside of the touristy area, look, this is the long, I'm going to give you the long answer now. That was all the middle part of the...
Yeah, I'm ready.
The answer. The long answer is this. Why was this happening? Is that what you basically asked me?
Yeah, I want to know.
Okay,
like mechanisms, pathway, yeah. Let's do it.
They're trying to get people off the island of Puerto Rico so they can go in and develop it themselves. And this all started way long time ago in the fact check the year on this, but I think it was in the 70s with this, it might have been the 60s, with this joint U.S. Puerto Rican economic plan called Operation Bootstrap. And it was essentially designed to turn Puerto Rico away from its agricultural, you know, I believe they were making sugarcane down there.
Probably.
Among maybe a couple of other things, but it was designed to turn it away from agricultural-based economy more towards manufacturing and tourism. And that also made the economy dependent on federal funding, like what I've been telling you.
Well, if you're not growing food either, right?
Well, and with the Jones Act, all the food they're bringing in.
Right.
You know. So it basically was this economic plan to turn the island from a farming island into a modernized, which I think people are now realizing is not good. Modernizing something is not always the best thing. I mean, the power grid would be good to modernize, but moving away from, I mean, dude, there's not even, they're so fucked. It's horrible.
Well, it's like if you're trying to turn the island and taking it all its agriculture away and turning it into a spot for tourism and manufacturing, you're now basically taking away that island's ability to feed itself should that tourism and the manufacturing fail, which is a total hinge point for manipulation and control. It's like, well, if we leave, you can't even grow your own fucking food. So
food, education, healthcare,
everything,
power.
The ability for self-determination is gone.
Yep. Yeah. And so basically that also, it worked short term basically and created this sort of economic boom in Puerto Rico, but long term the results fucked everything up. It took away all the economic opportunities, job opportunities, put people on welfare, dependency on federal funds, and then created insanely high out-migration to places like New York City and apparently Florida even more so. But look, this is what's crazy is that explains the entire current state of the island. And on top of that, in conjunction with this Operation Bootstrap economic plan was this this sterilization program called La Operación because Puerto Rican women were having, 6 to 15 kids. Like, dude, you got to remember, they were fucking farmers. My grandma, she was one of 14 brothers and sisters. She grew up on a farm. Puerto Ricans were just like that. It's the same exact thing. It was the way America used to be. Anybody that lived on a farm was having like 10 kids. Kids were your slave labor to work the farm. The way it should be.
Dude.
And when they turned it away from that, they were like, wait, okay, so Puerto Rican women have a bunch of kids, but if they're working manufacturing and we want this to be a touristy area, it's going to be too overpopulated. At least that's what I think the thought process was. There might be more nuance to that. In fact, I'm sure there is. But basically, they were like, okay, well, let's run a sterilization operation as well, which was significantly funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, by the way. Which that's
why is it always the same people?
Yeah, dude. Well. Don't even get me started on that. Look up who has holdings in Quanta Services, by the way, one of the owners of Luma. I'll give you a hint. It's BlackRock. So the Rockefeller Foundation funded the sterilization campaign called La Operación, and by 1982, like a third of the island's women were sterilized completely. And a lot of them weren't even told that they were part of these
Holy fuck, man.
Yeah, dude, it was fucked up. And there were actually 3 deaths linked to it because they were giving these women... Look, Puerto Rico was the place where they did the first ever experimental test of the birth control pill. That's what it was. That's what I was kind of building up to. It was the first place they tested birth control. They were testing population control before they did it on the American mainland. Puerto Rico's a testing island for pretty much everything that we're experiencing in America. I think we get it like 20, 30 years after them, maybe even shorter than that. But my point is that they were testing birth control on Puerto Rican women, and they were giving them such high doses that some of them were dying. None of it was ever fucking investigated because it was part of this government operation. And
oh my God,
it worked because now Puerto Rico's got an inverted pyramid population, and I think they did the same thing to America. They were like, all right, push all this stuff about birth control and abortion and all the just absolutely culturally condition women to not have kids, so then abortion, we can replace it with AI or automized machinery or replacement immigrant labor that's super cheap. It's basically slavery. I mean, and for the record, I'm not even really against abortion necessarily. I think the issue is that it's pushed on people to basically propagandize them, to women, I should say, I guess men too, to not want to have kids so that the people who have the skilled labor and know the worth of what their work is don't replicate and reproduce and have children that say, I know what I should be fucking paid. No, we'll bring in some guy from India and pay him shit and use him as a slave. And obviously conditions in India, I mean, India's such a shithole. I mean, literally has a shit throwing.
It does.
Festival.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is that I actually think in a certain capacity, the reason that, never mind. I'll stay on track here.
You're good, dude. You're fine. You can say
look,
whatever
dude,
the fuck you want, man. At all.
No. I don't give a fuck I'll say whatever I want. I'm just saying.
Good.
I was thinking about something and then I realized I don't think it totally made sense. But the point is that no hate on the Indians, often. Dude. When I was growing up, the Indian people that I grew up with were mostly the smartest people I fucking knew, and there were a lot of doctors and stuff. And that's because they were the ones that were smart and had the money to immigrate here, and there was like a vetting process. But my whole point in telling you all this is that the fucking government, in my opinion, especially in Puerto Rico, they don't want to take care of the American citizens on purpose because they don't want them to be educated to know what's going on so that they can take in these like, really basically uneducated, low IQ people from fucking third world countries so that they can keep running their gambit. That's what my theory about all this is.
And those people have no investment in maintaining the experiment of the United States.
And by the time that they're fucking second or third generation, their grandkids do have investment in that, they do the same fucking thing to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, it happens over and over. That's okay. So
it's cyclical.
When we were talking about Dearborn, Michigan, the reason I'm like, oh, this is all fucking... By the time those Muslims all have their grandkids are going to be fucking completely Americanized, and they're going to be on birth control, and they're not going to be having all this. It's going to be the same thing. They're doing this. Every culture that America imports, they do the same thing, dude. And they slowly kill them off psychologically, subconsciously. It's like spiritual warfare if you believe in God. But my whole point is that...
We talk about spiritual warfare all the time.
The Puerto Ricans are getting fucked. And I basically think that... They're trying to import them into the mainland United States so that they can use the island for whatever purposes they want, probably nefarious.
Depopulate it.
Depopulate it, use it as a tax haven, use it as a tourist spot, use it for whatever they want, you know? Sex trafficking rings. I mean, dude, you know that I was saying earlier there's a lot of dead bodies connected to the conspiracy on the island. And I don't say conspiracy theory. I'm saying conspiracy.
Yeah, like criminal conspiracy. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. There was a guy, Nikolai Meshagian. He was a crypto millionaire, and he tweeted that. See, this shit freaks me out. He tweeted that the CIA and Mossad are running a joint sex trafficking ring on the island, and 4 hours later he drowned. So it's
Did he happen to be a cook for the Obamas at any point?
Dude, see, this is what I'm talking about, man. I think I'm like actually worried that what I'm doing is dangerous.
Well, listen, man, I'll say this. I'm not going to bullshit you. That is dangerous. Like, you're investigating crime. Like, people doing crime don't like people talking about the crime they do. So, mad respect.
Yeah, you know what's interesting too is if somebody's stealing from Walmart.
Not me.
I don't give a shit, dude. I steal something there every time I go to the self-checkout. Although they've made it very hard with the weight, the scale.
Yeah.
If somebody's selling weed or even selling coke, I don't give a shit. Dude, if you're inhibiting the ability of an entire island, even people that are working class, especially people that are working class, you're inhibiting them from living a life with proper electricity and energy infrastructure, because the electricity is intrinsically tied to the water.
Everything.
And then they lose the water. There's no school. I mean, you're a piece of shit. And that's the kind of shit that's worth exposing, like... I'm sure there's other. It's just fucked up, and
it kind of made me think about like how much food are they losing on the island every year from freezers and refrigerators going out?
It is insane.
You know what I mean?
That's basically that's like the number one problem.
Yeah.
No. I mean, he said like the two big issues are power surges, blowing up electric appliances, and refrigerators going bad because these blackouts. I mean, they have blackouts all the time, and they last days, and then they lose their food, their meat, and given that a lot of the islands on food stamps, you lose your meat, you don't have any food stamps until the next month, you got nowhere to eat, and the water goes out regularly as well. A lot of the people in Puerto Rico started using cisterns and other rainwater harvesting systems in order to basically have access to water during blackouts, because the public water, there's these things called water hammers where when the electricity goes out, the water valves at the pumps, they shut randomly, or not randomly, abruptly, and it cuts off the water, which creates a swell, like a
pressure
spike in water pressure, and it punches a hole through the water pipes, and then then the water's out, and given that a lot of these islands pour anyways, then you got poor people who aren't very educated. Then they have no water, they have no food, they're living in suboptimal conditions because things are sort of deteriorating because they haven't been taught how to maintain stuff. And I don't necessarily even, that's no fault of their own. That'd be like me expecting to just know how to repair my fucking everything about my car. I mean, I'm pretty handy, but to be like, hey, rebuild the transmission. It's not a real, like, dude, the power grid was built and then all this fucked up shit happened. There's a reliance on oil, and when oil prices go up, the price of electricity goes up, and it wasn't until the 90s that they privatized some like coal-fired plants, and now people are using a ton of solar because they just don't trust the electric grid. But like the unions, blowing up power lines and self-sabotage and making PREPA basically an unsustainable entity because the unions were asking for so much money. And then the privatization, on one end you got the more like socialist union angle, which then becomes corrupt and you're fucked because it's too expensive. And then on the other end you got the capitalist angle, and you're like,
well, sounds like a monopoly.
Privatization will work, but then they're stealing all the monies from lawyers. It's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So
does Luna have competition on the island? It's not even capitalism at that point if it's just a monopoly.
Right. Crony capitalism, right?
Capitalism. Yeah. Well, and I looked it up too because what you were talking about was the disenfranchisement of workers in general, which happened really hardcore to the like mainland Americans in the 60s and 70s, right? Like continental US. And so I looked it up because NAFTA is another thing that really butt fucked the American worker. So I'm just going to read you what I found here about NAFTA and its effect on Puerto Rico. It says it crippled the island's manufacturing competitiveness by giving U.S. companies a cheaper tariff-free alternative in Mexico. The shift helped justify Congress's decision to phase out Section 936, the crucial corporate tax incentive that anchored Puerto Rico's industrial economy. The combined effect triggered massive factory flight, job losses, and long-term economic decline across the island. So NAFTA butt-fucked Puerto Rico pretty hard, too.
So they literally got them off of agriculture into manufacturing and then turned off their manufacturing.
And then de-incentivized manufacturing in Puerto Rico. Yeah. And that's Bill Clinton right there. Yeah. So that's fucking nuts, man. It's so wild how much people don't even know about what goes on in Puerto Rico at all. And it's funny too, because the point you even made, right? Like I earlier when I was talking about my buddy and I said that he's an American citizen, I didn't even like think about the fact that should be obvious because even if he's from Puerto Rico, he's still an American citizen. But it isn't obvious to a lot of people who don't realize that. And you don't hear anything about Puerto Rico unless you're hearing about like fucking baseball or vacation, or somebody who's Puerto Rican. So many people don't even realize that, like, quite literally these are American citizens that live in third world conditions, like you said before, who are more dependent upon the federal government than any other state that, part of the United States that is a state, because there is a state government and there's some separation between state, and the individual and the federal government. There is none in Puerto Rico. It's like the perfect treatise on why the fuck you shouldn't trust the government to run quite literally everything, because the corruption you're worried about, these idiots that think the government is going to fix all the corruption that private industry has brought to their lives. It's like, look, this is even worse. It's like the whole thing with food stamps. Like you mentioned before, people are like, oh, well, if the government shut down, I can't get my food stamps. Like, you're right. If you put all of the responsibility on a group of people that doesn't have your best interests at heart, then guess what? They're not going to take care of you at all. Like, this is a total demonstration of that. Dude, it's crazy.
Look, people that don't have your best interests at heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we know the government doesn't have our best interests at heart? I would argue largely the reason we have figured that out is because of FOIA requests and declassified documents showing things like this birth control testing stuff. Like, basically, the lack of transparency in the government, operating in the shadows, secret societies, stuff like
Richard
that.
Helms being interrogated and telling Sidney Gottlieb to go and destroy all of the MK Ultra files, and they were told not to. Right?
I think COVID did it for a lot of people in this generation.
COVID was a big wake up. Yeah.
COVID, absolutely. Epstein, and I think this Charlie Kirk thing. Now, here's the reason I bring it up. In Puerto Rico, there is a lot of the financial board, La Junta, a lot of the stuff that they do is they're operating in secrecy, so to speak. And actually, when we were on the island, the last member, Andrew Biggs, was fired by Trump. And in September, which would be like 2 months later, the financial board, 3 of the former members, Arthur Gonzalez, Betty Rosa, and Andrew Biggs, and I believe that Betty Rosa was appointed to the board by Trump. Anyways, they're suing Trump for illegal firings, and that's ironic because they were supposed to be handling the power grid bankruptcy, but instead they fucking funneled $2 billion of money off the island to New York lawyers. And if anybody should be suing, it's Puerto Ricans should be suing them. And on top of that, they should also, they should be suing them, and they should be demanding investigation into this. But they actually can't sue them because in 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court determined that the Financial Oversight and Management Board has sovereign immunity, so they can't be sued for public records. And then on top of that, recently, again, since we left, the Senate President, Thomas Rivera Schatz, filed a bill to amend the Transparency Act. He basically filed an anti-transparency bill, which included a number of things that there's no need for. But most striking was the removal of the Privacy Protection Clause. So anybody that requests information, like an information request, the person handling the request, the public information officer, can see who requested it, which means that your information can be denied based on who you are. Like, I don't know, a journalist investigating corruption. It's crazy, dude. For me to request something compared to like some random guy, the odds of me being denied is like dramatically
basically
higher.
100%.
So there's all this lack of transparency, but dude, everything we're talking about is in this documentary. It's like 2 hours long, by the way. It's long, but when I say it's long, I mean it's like the way we edit, the way Joel does. Joel's a filmmaker. He's like all, oh, I'm artsy. Oh, I'm gonna make it great. But he's the best editor I've ever worked with, and he's, dare I say, a genius. But the way that he put it together is pretty incredible. So he basically took all the research I did and all the voiceovers and stuff that I did, and we jammed him into this thing, which is essentially Joel's the camera, and I'm always, the way we operate is we're just kind of going about business as usual. You know what I mean? When I say that, I mean like we're not operating like mainstream news where I'm like, hey, turn the camera on and set up this shot real quick. He's rolling when he's rolling, and if we miss something, we miss it. We just keep shooting from the hip, and so basically you're getting Joel's perspective, first person perspective through the camera of everything that's going on, and it's insane. And we got some antics in there as well. I was pretty high the entire time we were there. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I was on a lot of painkillers.
Island life, bro.
Yeah. But
you had pneumonia when you were there?
No. I got pneumonia while we were editing it.
Oh shit!
I got pneumonia when we went the day before we left for Dearborn. So because we got hired to go to Dearborn while we were editing, and I was like, "Fuck, I got to pay my mortgage." So we picked up this gig to go up to Dearborn, and the day before we left, I got pneumonia, and then we got back. Like, dude, this thing, we could have had it out like 2 weeks ago, and Joel's sick too. So we've been editing this. Like, I had to recut the voiceovers because you can. It's all.
Yeah.
Some of them still sound like shit to me. Like, I can hear how nasally I sound. I've been having these like nose strips on while do it. You know what I mean? Doing neti pot and the fucking vaporizer.
The
thing.
neti pot is legit.
All of it, dude. Well, if there's one place that you want to go when you're having a bacterial infection in your lungs, it's the upper Midwest during the late fall and winter. Like, that's exactly where you wanted to be.
Literally.
I'm from Ohio, dude.
Yeah.
Originally, so
Okay.
I go.
Yeah.
You get those Midwest winters around there.
Dude.
Dude, we're getting snow down in Texas like for 3 of the past 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I wanna tell you. There's something else I have here that I want to talk to you about. I'm finding it real quick.
I just wonder who's like on the island who's like, fuck this, and has had enough.
A lot of people.
Yeah, leading some sort of resistance, however that looks like to it, you know? Like, sounds like the lawyer you were talking about earlier is that person, but...
Well, I think he was just having a good time telling us all the stuff that he knows. He's a lawyer, you know? He's like, man, I don't blame the law firms for upcharging all this stuff, you know? They're lawyers. That's what they do. They get paid hourly.
Yeah.
The longer it takes, the more they get paid.
Oh, yeah.
The people at fault is the financial board. They are the Financial Oversight and Management Board is a shadow government of Puerto Rico, and they control the economy, so they control the island, and any legislation that's passed, they can supersede with a simple signing of the pen. And,
That's crazy.
And they aren't from Puerto Rico, so they don't give a fuck if it gets solved or not. Period.
Yeah. What
Just
were you
to
looking
emphasize.
Yeah.
The thing I was going to tell you was the way that the power grid is sort of mapped out, right? So there's PREPA, which is the government entity, and they basically were obviously bankrupt, but they were the sole power company for the island. They owned all the grid assets, like the power lines, the substations, the power plants, wiring, everything like that, and customer service. And when Luma came in, which, like I said, was created with the sole purpose of replacing them and operating the transmission and distribution, which is substations, power lines, and customer service, Luma came in to handle that. But then the actual generation of the electricity in the power plants is handled by Genera PR. So we went to the Aguirre, the PREPA Aguirre power plant system in Salinas, and that is managed by Genera PR. That's generation, obviously, and those assets are still owned by PREPA, the government agency that's bankrupt. Just a little interesting anecdote there. And then there's the Puerto Rican Energy Bureau. No, there's not. It's well,
Not at their level. There's no way out.
Well, dude, the way that they get out of it is to have a political power in order to. Yeah, it's tough, but they need to. Like I said, the last member of the board, Robert Mujica, he needs to be shit canned, and they need to resolve the PREPA bankruptcy, like basically as quickly as possible, and then the grid restoration can happen. And if that happens, I think education will improve, and because then federal funds that go to Puerto Rico won't be used for the energy infrastructure anymore, and they'll be able to improve life. But I don't know, man. It's pretty rough. I wanted to tell you about the so like the way the grid is handled. I just, anybody that's watching this, I want it to be clear that so PREPA still owns the grid assets, right? Luma handles transmission and distribution, Genera PR and handles the generation, but they can't, like I was saying this earlier, none of them can operate without the financial board approving budgets for all of them, right? And then there's the people who determine the actual rate of electricity, which correlates to the number on the bill that the Puerto Rican gets, is determined by the Puerto Rican Energy Bureau, which is an independent regulatory body, and they also can't operate without financial oversight. And then there's COR3, and they're the ones who actually handle the FEMA funds. And then there's obviously FEMA, which is on the mainland. And so the reason I'm telling you all this is because I was telling you about how Luma's been involved in all these lawsuits and litigation, and different things that have. Some of them have been handled, and some of them are just dismissed because judges are. Oh well, they're a body that has gained. There's too much for them to lose. Almost like they're too big to fail, like how the banks and shit. But the reason I'm mentioning all this is because there's been some litigation with the contractors that were handling some of the FEMA funds way back when, like Cobra Acquisitions, and they were found to have been, like FEMA officials were arrested too. They were found to have been taking bribes to determine who gets their FEMA funds first. So
shocker.
Yeah. So basically, what I'm saying is the corruption goes all the way up. And when you were asking earlier, just tying up a loose end, when you're asking earlier about what politicians can this be tied to, et cetera, I'll put it this way. I was talking to a lobbyist a couple months ago about how funding operates in Puerto Rico, and of course he gave me the same spiel. He's like, be careful, dude. Don't talk too much about this. And basically, he said that anything that's going on in Puerto Rico or related to federal funding, somebody in Washington knows about it. Mm-hmm. So it's coming from a lobbyist that he saw it happening, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that I mean, people are always going to take kickbacks. That's happened in every government and every governmental structure and every economic structure ever. Mm-hmm. So it's I think it's about basically having a morally justified culture that acts as a backbone of the government, and also having a strong fourth estate. But our news media is all fucking garbage. So
yeah.
Now it's sort of the fifth estate. That's what I call what we do. It's on us now.
There's that fifth thing again. The next place you should go.
I'm the fifth column, dude. I'm going to take over Puerto Rico and become the fucking.
I could see you now, man.
Ruler.
All you gotta do is put that boat hat back on.
There it is.
You'd be in business. You should link up with fucking Spencer Pratt and come down here to California and go to the Palisades and talk to some of those fucking people.
Do you watch our documentary on that?
I've watched some of the stuff that you've had on that, but not like a ton.
Dude, we snuck past the National Guard, and with these old ladies, because they were like, well, I want to. This one lady was like, her name was Zelda. She was telling me that she wanted to find this one specific sort of like family item, and I was like, lady, I'll sneak you in there, but I don't think we're gonna find it.
Yeah,
I didn't tell her that. I was thinking like, dude, the odds of finding that are like astronomical. So of course we snuck past the National Guard with no problem. It was crazy. It was like they couldn't even see us, like we were fucking invisible, being guided by the hand of God. And then she found that exact item, and I was like, oh shit,
that's
God's
crazy.
real.
You were
It was
supposed
insane,
to help her,
dude. I mean, even Joel was like, holy shit, dude. He was,
right.
I mean, like, I'm a spiritual person, but, my religious affiliations with, Christianity, I was raised Catholic, it's gone up and down, but even Joel was like, dude, maybe God's real. We were like, oh my God. Yeah. It was insane.
Dude, that's wild.
It was cool.
I say that because FEMA, again, is a culprit in that whole thing, and the money that hasn't gone to people. Like, with people having... dude, what was it that Karen... Yeah, what's Karen Bass, right? That's her
Karen
name?
Bass!
Yeah. And trying to use that home that was already scheduled to be built to say that the funds were already rebuilding homes, when the home that was built was a new construction and wasn't even somebody's home at the time. Like, wasn't even somebody's home in general. Like, they were just rebuilding. They were building a home that they were already scheduled to build that nobody lived in anyway. Yeah,
dude, she's a bad person.
She is a bad person.
Pretty bad person. Hey, dude, speaking of FEMA funds, I totally spaced on this, which is one of the core parts of the doc. We met this guy named Rudy. He was a school teacher, and he's a military vet. And he got denied FEMA funding because he was a vet. Because they were saying that he should be getting VA benefits and stuff, yeah. And he has no roof on his house. He's been living like that for 8 years, no electricity. His house is daisy-chained to the house that his dad bought next door. They haven't had electricity for 8 years. He's had issues with running water pretty regularly, and it's like
you put that on Instagram, didn't you?
Yeah, but the full thing is in the doc, and his kids were, dude, they're so young, and they already know what they want to be when they grow up. They're interested in school. They don't care about not having things like basic electricity, you know? They said, hey, we don't care. We love our parents, and they've taught us that the things you value in life should be your family. And I was like, whoa, dude.
Well, dude,
really shows you that what builds character and what doesn't. I mean, those kids are going to grow up and be badass, basically. There's like a 0% chance those kids grow up to be shitbags. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, we talk about that all the time, about struggle being a massive joint unifier, and that Americans don't have to struggle for anything. There's generations on generations of Americans that have never had to wonder where their food is coming from. To your point, this Muslim person you were talking to in Dearborn saying that Americans have gone soft, like Christians have gone soft. Well, absolutely, because they've never had to struggle for anything, and struggle creates a bond that you are not going to get anywhere else. And it's the same sort of thing I saw with the kids when I was deployed to Africa. Those kids had nothing. They didn't have electricity. They were quite literally living in stick huts and having to go down to a creek to pull water from it with a bucket and walk it back, through tall grass filled with snakes and other animals around there, and these are 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds walking with a 7-year-old, day to day doing this thing. And they seem just as happy or more happy than a lot of the kids I meet today who constantly want for everything when they have so much and have no idea what it's like to not have.
Dude, I mean, I think that's done on purpose. The people that run the world aren't dumb. They know that the way that they're conditioning people is going to have long-term consequences. They want people sucking at the titty of the government, because if that happens, they don't know how to handle things themselves, and they don't want self-sufficient men specifically.
Yeah.
And they don't want women having children that are raised by strong men.
Well, and
because those are the people that, when a financial board is stealing all your money, those are the people that go and blow them all away. You know what I mean?
Demographically, what's the largest population of men in the United States, to your point at the beginning of this conversation? White dudes.
Yeah, we pay all the taxes, and we do most of the work in the modern society. And historically, pretty much always have, there's a...
I think it's backfiring on them at the moment, to be honest
with
you.
Here's the thing, man. I think that there's people are sort of waking up to that now.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, is that the Gen Z and then Gen Alpha right up behind them lived in a world where they were told they were intrinsically bad for their immutable characteristics. And now there's a bunch of kids, and I say kids on purpose, who don't understand that, well, first off, they know that that's wrong because they have self-worth and they realize that the things that they're being told about themselves are not true. But the other half of it is they lack the education behind what the point of that was, right? And then also understanding what an appropriate solution looks like to correcting that action. This is a paradigm that was developed in those kids that they feel like almost a sense of revenge. I think a lot of that generation does. And
Gen Z.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dude, yeah. Look at the rise of people like Nick Fuentes or any of these other people that are basically becoming white nationalists.
Exactly. And I didn't even say that.
I think that it's almost done on purpose, because I don't think these people running the world are dumb. They want to balkanize the country. They want tribal white people. They want tribal black people. They want dude. Look, here's the thing. You said something about the education of Gen Z and Gen Alpha and all this, dude. So the millennials, my generation. I'm 32. The millennials, we were also sort of brainwashed. Well, they tried to, but I think Gen X kind of was as well. But this all happened with the boomers, in my opinion.
Yes.
I think the boomers basically allowed all this shit to happen, and then we get put into this like weird cycle where instead of saying, "Hey, let's bring everybody up," and we don't like kings or oligarchs or technocrats. We want everybody. We're Americans, dude. We used to pride ourselves on being tough, working hard, and basically kicking ass. And now we're doing the work of the wealthy around the world, whether it be in wars or in developing technology or dancing like fucking clowns on TikTok. And now we have no soul, we have no culture, and there's some people in the country, and I am happy that they have been able to hold on to this, but some people are able to hold on to their culture for a little bit longer. Hispanic people, I think, do a pretty good job of that, which I respect the fuck out of, but white and black people have been completely hollowed out in this country. We have no traditional culture left. It's not just white people, dude.
Black people's
what group
culture
has been able to hold on to it the best. It's just, in my experience, the
Asians.
Amish. Well, but look at the way that the Amish have been able to do it. It was just a complete and total rejection of modernity wholesale.
Yeah,
but if you go and look at little enclaves of Amish communities,
they're losing a lot of their population. But you're right; they have held on to that for a long time.
But anyway,
but to your point, it's still alive. No, you're right. I was just gonna say, like, you look like black people and white people. To your point, Gary, like losing out, like hollowing out a culture that has happened. The black people got off on the wrong foot completely because they were automatically second-class citizens the second that they were emancipated, right. And there were decades and decades of oppression that went on, right? Like their culture originally doesn't even exist here in the United States, and then were denied the opportunity almost at every turn to assimilate into a culture that they were told they were supposed to assimilate into. And so now, like, what do they have? They have all these subcultures that now, not a lot of them are very good. Now there are a lot of examples of black people that
their culture's basically been handcrafted by intelligence agencies and millionaires.
That's what I'm getting at. Those are all these subcultures that I'm talking about. Like the rap scene is it's a manufactured culture, right? To keep people. Right. That's what I'm getting at. Like all these subcultures are manufactured cultures, and white people in general, I think, have. What was that?
That was just Joel. He's editing.
Oh, okay. Crazy.
Yeah, he's getting in the zone.
Word.
It's 11 p.m. here, so.
Oh, word.
We're like 3 hours into our workday.
He's like, all of our shit just got deleted. That's what he was yelling for.
That's right? What I thought that was too. Control Z, brother. Control Z.
Right.
Yeah, click undo.
No, the fucking point I was trying to get at is that I think that white people and our like loss of culture has come from a class of people who used to work and could survive on the work that they did, and then the emancipation of women through work and birth control eventually led to dual working parents, and then you had the generation of Gen X, really is where this began, of latchkey kids raising themselves, and this notion of, well, I've had to take care of myself for so long, which is the pride that Gen X has, that a lot of them tend to not give a shit about a lot of other things, and then Gen X and boomers really raised millennials on these things, and then the economy got hollowed out from the 60s and 70s all the way up through NAFTA, where it got worse, and everything millennials got told was total bullshit by the time we became adults, because now college degrees are totally fucking worthless. And so this cultural identity we had of being
three
like
of them right there, dude.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, exactly. I have several as well. This cultural identity we had of being like the working class American, and it's not just whites, right? Obviously, there's tons of other ethnicities that are that way too. But what I'm saying is, like, this white culture or whatever is now been replaced by an apathy, I'd say. Like, it's not just whites, but it is a large portion of this country that is white. So that is unfortunately the main demographic.
Apathy is the antithesis to public action, or whatever the fuck Socrates or Plato said. I butchered that. None of that was right. But the point is that the apathetic feeling about how the country is because it feels hopeless. Like you said, I think it's largely because of rampant, unjustified, uncapped capitalism, basically destroying the Christian values that set up a lot of this, but also just any traditional values, whether it be people that descend from slaves. It destroyed the traditional aspects of their culture that got them through hard times. Any of the Irish and Italian immigrants that come over. I mean, what is it, like 2 generations after you move to America, you're basically turned into a mass consumer, mindless brain rot, doing TikTok dances, and you're on OnlyFans. I mean, look, I can't fault anybody for doing any of that because we all got to make a fucking living, and this country is getting to the point where everything's meaningless, so why not? Why not create meaning doing a fucking TikTok dance? Why not create meaning from getting fucked on camera? Why not at least get paid? At least get paid so that you can be comfortable in this sort of dystopian hellscape we've created. But
I think that what you just described was the sort of the mechanism that created all of this, right? Like everything Americans had, we built, right? And then what did we do? We got rid of that capability to build anything.
To manufacture it,
to
dude.
manufacture. And then so what happened there? Now you're dependent on other people and other things and other entities to provide these things for you, and that frees up all your time to do a bunch of other shit. You emphasize the intellectual, which the intellectual all the way from the 60s moving forward had nothing to do with being an individual. It had everything to do with being a collective, and it's just like this whole fucking shit show machine of turning you into, like you said, a consumer. Like capitalism on its face is meant to be competition. Right, it's meant to produce something at the end that's supposed to be better, and then that just keeps going until everything is great. You're supposed, let me slow down. I'm like getting ahead of myself. Capitalism is supposed to drive things to be better through competition, and the exchange of money for goods and services is a byproduct of that. That again is built on competition,
and
now
the exchange of ideas for
the exchange
monetary...
of ideas as well. Yeah,
So,
it's all.
Yeah, you guys layer on top of that, Brandon, what you're talking about, the neo-Marxist takeover of the education system, and then mass migration begun under the Hard Seller Act, right, the 1960s. And like there is like basically the big primordial soup that is the demoralization of America that Yuri Bezmenov was telling us about.
Yeah,
And
dude,
then,
what you're saying
We're
is
stage 4.
we're experiencing
yeah.
the marriage of capitalism and communism, and we're realizing that they're pretty much the exact same. They create slaves.
Right. Well, the main focus.
When I say they're the
much...
same, I mean when they're unchecked. The idea of capitalism on its face, as it with the idea of communism on its face, is actually sort of utopian, which means that it's not real. And so we need to figure something else out. I think we're going to have a pretty dramatic shift in our understanding of what America truly is.
Yeah. The check on capitalism is supposed to be the person spending their money where they want to, and if they don't spend your money on your product, then you're a shit product, and you're going to go out of business. But then the government gets involved, and it pumps money into businesses that should die but aren't going to. So now what you've done is created a completely and totally unfair system where it's not capitalism anymore, and now you're just winding up in the same spot that the communists wound up in, where well, all the means of production are supposed to be controlled by the people, and we're supposed to do all these things. Well, now the government has total state control of those things, and when the government picks winners and losers, what is that? That's state control on your life.
So look, a perfect example of this is how John Rockefeller shaped much of the modern American landscape that we live in, like raw milk. That's another thing that we actually talk about in the doc, weirdly enough. The banning of the intrastate sale of raw milk, and the General Education Board that formed the modern American public education system, and litany of other things. He invested in a company that ripped up the tram lines that were across America. My point is that the reason that the government is able to pick winners and losers is because they're influenced by people that use the very capital that you're speaking about to basically vote with, or whatever you want to call it, to influence the government to do those said things. And given that
exactly
human nature is intrinsically, I think, is hedonistic, not necessarily evil or good, but hedonistic. We want what we want, and
seeking
people
of
want
pleasure.
money. Well, basically what I'm saying is that the problem with capitalism is that from the jump, the issue's in the name. You're worshiping capital. And if you're not basically putting your own values first, then you're going to be putting money first. And then you're going to get things like people that are going to be taking government grants to turn kids trans and do porn. And again, whatever. I can't change and save the world, but my point is that the values that created America are intrinsically libertarian Christian. Separation of church and state, but not a separation between God and state. So all of our values, like the idea of glory, for example, I think that comes from it's sort of like a warrior Christian. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, what I was going to say is whatever ism you're talking about, capitalism, communism, there is never going to be a total mechanism to account for human nature, because human beings have an innate need to be checked. There's always a parental relationship that is supposed to go on, because nobody acts with 100% integrity, right? And you're supposed to have a good enough moral compass to check yourself and have integrity to not make poor decisions, but that doesn't happen, right? You're talking about a utopia. So whatever ism it is, whether it's capitalism or communism or socialism or whatever, there's always going to be an issue with people being pieces of shit, because there is no mechanism that can completely account for human nature. And so what do people do? They look at government, which in the capitalism example you provided is being paid off by the money you're paying into the system, which you're supposed to really be voting with your dollars. So again, there's no check in that system for human nature. And communism, right? Somebody has to force you into the re-education camp. Somebody has to force you to go work here, or go to a gulag and do all these things. So again, there's no mitigation for human nature, and human beings need to control things, and human beings need to take a kickback for something and not have integrity. But at the end of the day, I think that as Americans, to your point about its founding on Christian principles from, and then Enlightenment secular principles as well, and I did a thing today about David Hume and sort of like the secular morality that he talks about, but all of that you can't escape from, I think, the Christian base of our founding. And that 100% is meant to be that parental relationship that exists in your life is supposed to be your commitment to God, to be a good person, to have integrity, to follow Christ's example. All that stuff is and why he knows that you are an imperfect being and you're going to make mistakes, and that relationship is like almost like it is a parent-child relationship. It keeps you accountable to yourself because you're supposed to be seeking out a relationship with him, but that doesn't exist. It's why John Adams said that the U.S. Constitution is meant only for a wholly upright and moral people. It doesn't work when you have no unifying principles anymore. I think when you talk about the founding of the United States, because we do have freedom of religion, which means you can also have freedom from religion as well if you don't want to follow it. We're not a theocracy. You don't have to do those things, which honestly is why I made the post about Hume today, because he specifically does not believe in God, and he writes about morality from a secular standpoint, which I think when you look at humans, you kind of can't get away from that anyway. I think you're sort of you're bought in anyway, but that this idea of goodness and keeping yourself in check and having integrity, and that mechanism I was talking about before, how there is no total account for human nature, that human nature check is supposed to come from you, and that check would come from you seeking a relationship with God, but not everybody does that. Or you don't look at those same morals and principles, because that's really what they all are at the end of the day. Integrity, morals, ethics, all these things, they're good. There's no secular check for that either. People don't seek that out. There's not an example that exists in our modern society of a secular morality, essentially. Does that make sense? So like people create a false sense of morals based on things that feel good, hedonism, and that becomes the thing that they're moving towards. It's their secular value. And I think that's why you see a large resurgence of Christianity in Gen Z specifically, because they've recognized that hedonistic thing that you're talking about doesn't provide any real value. It doesn't at all.
Yeah, and the good news about the secular people is that most of them don't end up reproducing, so it's only a temporary problem in the long
Yeah.
timeline of life. But
That's true.
But also, in a certain capacity, when you, well, that's a whole other philosophical thing. Yeah, the thing about this secularism is that there's people that are like, I know there's no God, or I know this, or whatever, and that's what are you doing here?
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think that there's an element of
Like,
nihilism.
what's your purpose? Why don't you kill yourself? Serious.
Well, that's what it says.
You.
It's nihil. No, I get you. You. That's, to me, like, that viewpoint is nihilistic. It's also
that's what I meant. I should have stated that better.
You're good,
I'm talking about the more nihilistic side of things. I mean, I used to kind of be like that myself.
Yeah, I understand completely what you get, and I think, like, or what you meant. And to your point earlier about, like, people like Nick Fuentes, because he's not alone. There's other people. I mean, he's kind of like the biggest one right now, but there are others that think this way. You know, you talk to some of these guys about, like, why they watch a show or they believe some of the things that he believes and buy into his statement. I think it is rooted in nihilism. And I say that because when I ask this, like, well, I'll give you an example of something that he says that really mirrors a lot of the same rhetoric that came out of, like, the Cultural Revolution, for example. And they're like, well, you know, the system is already corrupt, so what's the big deal? It's like, well, that's a very nihilistic approach to this, because what you're saying here then is nothing matters. And once you arrive at a point mentally where nothing matters, then, well, okay, then everything is permitted if nothing matters. And now you're arriving further at a place where the only identity you have is the collective identity, because you're beholden to whatever the collective thinks. And typically people tend to create collectives on immutable characteristics. And then you're left with an in group and an out group, and that group eventually will tighten, and the individual person that you are and the compassion you have as a person will eventually shine through until you're left with a small group of people at the top, you know, your Stalins and Maos and all these other fucking people who kill everybody else because the collective ideal or the collective identity is the only allowable identity. And you got to that point because nothing matters. It's corrupt anyway. Well, nothing matters. Now everything is permissible. And because anything is permissible, then then it's totally fine, because I need you to die for this to come to fruition, and I'm going to round up all the kulak farmers in Ukraine and starve them to death so I can control the development and use of food throughout the USSR. Like, there's just, that's it. It's all nihilism.
Solzhenitsyn?
Alexander Solzhenitsyn? Yeah, I've read Gulag Archipelago,
is that how you
but I've never
pronounce his name?
Solzhenitsyn. Yeah, I've never read anything other than. Oh, I mean, it's a hard last name, dude. But the Gulag Archipelago is the only one of his that I've read. I use an example from Gulag Archipelago all the time to talk about, like, the illusion of choice that we have here in the United States. So it's a really good book. It's definitely a slog, and it's very, very dark. And when I say slog, it's just very info dense. But it should be, like, fucking required reading, honestly.
Well, the reason I brought him up was because what you're explaining about the Fuentes mindset is he kind of touches on that. I mean, it's I don't know if you've realized this yet, but what Fuentes is saying is it's not gonna stop. That's the future of the right wing. Just letting you know. I know a lot of people that.
Oh, me too. And people that not even 6 months ago would have totally disagreed with him.
Well, yeah, and that's because people are. There's a lot of reasons behind it, but the reason I brought up Solzhenitsyn, I'm going to continue saying it that way. The reason I brought him up was because he gave a Harvard speech where he sort of references the cycles of civilizations, like. There's no stopping the Fuentes mindset, the new right-wing mindset. And anybody that's,
Victor Hugo said that you cannot kill an idea whose time has come. And that's exactly what I think is going on with a lot of things. Because I'll be real with you.
Sorry. I was going to say that the reason I'm bringing that up is because, not that I agree or disagree or have really any opinion on it. I'm getting to the point where I am going back to how I used to be and sort of reserving myself to just keeping my opinions more flat because I want to keep my journalistic endeavors open, meaning I want to keep my mind open to ideas. But the reason I'm saying it is because it's just it's very obviously the trajectory of the future of thought process because of what's been happening in America, how we're being balkanized. This is the result of that.
Correct.
We were talking about earlier.
It's the right wing's result of that. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, but also it's the natural. It's the natural end of capitalism, man.
Yeah, I mean, so fucking. Oh my God, Plato writes
People
about
don't
this.
realize that this fucking American, the hedonistic rags to riches, we're going all in, we're doing everything, no moderation.
Yeah.
Well, it's got to go somewhere eventually. You think that it's just gonna, it's not gonna be that kind of mentality is not gonna be like a stable. We're gonna have extremism, and it's gonna get way worse. It's gonna get way worse. And Puerto Rico's, funny enough, is a good example of the extremist mentality. These people are like, oh, we can get away with stealing money. Let's just steal all the money.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
a form of extremism. Yeah, that's a white collar extremism essentially. That's a nihilistic viewpoint as well. Like, because where is money going to get you at the end of your life? It's not going to get you fucking anywhere,
Dude, that's what I'm saying. How did we go from whatever? It is what it is.
What I was going to say
wanna
is that Aristotle and Plato talk about. Yeah, I just have one sentence. Aristotle and Plato talk about what you're talking about. So your idea isn't even new. It's very old. They talk about Aristotle talks about it, and Plato critiques democracy in Plato's Republic. He calls it degenerate democracy, and that it devolves into tyrannical control. So yeah,
it's always happened. This is not a new thing at all. I'm in fact, most of the stuff I talk about is stuff that I've just heard and learned from other people. I'm not even that smart. I'm just good at talking. Yeah, you're exactly. That's perfect. Perfect.
No, you're onto something. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say to the point that you were making about nihilism and like how you're supposed to stem it off, and this really goes back to what you were saying at the very beginning, Gary, is like one of the things that typically stood in the way of this progression was having kids and having the nuclear family.
Right.
Because then when you have kids, it stems off all the other things that you were saying, Brandon, this idea of like, well, what is it all for, right? Like, what am I doing this for? What really matters to me? Like, why am I working for all this wealth? Like, where is it going to go? Or it also steps in and starts adding that moderation of like, well, why shouldn't I just do anything that makes me feel good in the moment? Oh, because I want to set a good example for my kids, or I want to be here for my kids. It changes everything about how you act as an adult when you have a generation coming behind you that is reliant upon you. You're trying to set a good example for them. You're trying to leave something behind for them. You're trying to build a little bit of generational wealth for them. Like, traditionally, that was one of the cultural blocks to all of these things that you guys were talking about. But then, Gary, you pointed out, like, look what they did in Puerto Rico. Like, what was the first thing they did? And then you've hammered on it like twice, like every 2 generations, when they get overly, I'm going to call it not Americanized because I don't like that, but overly consumerized into this, Western consumer culture, then it's, okay, well, don't have kids, right? For whatever reason, whether that's through abortion, whether that's through birth control, like whether it's through manipulation of just like convincing you not to do it. And then when you're there, you got the millennial cat lady on the one side dancing on TikTok, like you've saying, and then on the other side you've got disaffected, young, angry white dude that's like, yeah, Nick Fuentes does have a point.
It's like choosing to not have kids is a form of hedonism, because what are dinks in general, like dual income, no kids,
Right.
is a seeking of pleasure in your life. That's it. Like you
they're
have
the most
no point.
unsufferable fucking people,
Right.
of all of them.
Yeah,
they're the ones
like,
that are fucking everything up, dude.
Exactly.
I mean, like,
it's hedonism without even calling it hedonism, really. I mean, that's what it is.
It's
They're trying to justify it.
natural evolution of the entire, like I was saying, it's the Marxist ideology with unjustified capitalism and the American way of life, which is just throw moderation to the wind and we don't need to have any traditions outside of drugs and guns and rock and roll and money and hookers and fuck everything else, fuck everybody else, bomb everybody else. And
Americans
now we're a
have been
shell
traditionally
company for
not
foreign
moderate.
interests.
Right. Oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. I don't think it was always like that. I think that's been a creation of the Cultural Revolution, which I think was also largely pushed through a Marxist school of thought. And
Yes.
some of that stuff might have been good, but some of it's
Frankfurt
really
School.
bad. And prior to that, I think a lot of what we were focused on was families and hard work, church, stuff like that, which also had its downsides as well. But I think most people are starting to realize that the way things used to be, with a few caveats, like specifically racial inequality and that's the biggest one. Things were better, and like, man, when I hear stories about, you ever heard of Black Wall Street, dude?
No.
It was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was literally
Oh,
bombed.
I thought you were talking about a Black Wall Street dude. Yes, I've heard of what you're talking about, Black Wall Street. Yes, and getting bombed.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because it's just one example, probably an extreme one of all the, like, okay, so Black Americans made this something for themselves, and then
Yeah.
it gets blown up, and now that's contributed to this balkanization that we've been talking about. But basically, I just think that it's hard to say that things are going in a good direction, but it's also hard to say that things are going in a bad direction from certain people's vantage points, when in the past things were worse. So it's like we're just at such a weird crossroads and
Yeah, I think
post-empire collapse.
I think you're right in that. Aside from, like you said, like the racial inequality that went on during like the Jim Crow era and prior to that, right? But being able to work and provide for a family, and it being the norm to have a wife who stayed home and provided for the kids, and it was the norm to have children and then, build something for them. That's a good thing. It is a block, like Chris said, to a lot of the problems we see today, because it gives you purpose. And most people tend to recognize when they have kids that they are the example for their children. And it does tend to drive better behaviors. Now, that's not in everybody, that's for sure. But I'll tell you, having kids for me has been one of the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, as far as recognizing what I need to do and who I need to be as a person, and then when you offshored all the manufacturing and the profits went to the top, and people cannot just create and buy the things they make and live in an economy where it's one income down at the Ford factory or the canning factory or whatever the fuck you're doing, and you can buy a house on that salary, and then you have decades of people. And it's been sold to us in this way. Like I said earlier, like birth control is an example that gets talked about all the time. It's it's the freedom you have you can go to work and you can be a career woman, and your kids will be fine at daycare, and like it's the social status symbol that becomes normalized, and then that whole nuclear family thing is totally erased. It's there are people trying to get back to that, but unfortunately, like, the playing field isn't the same as it was when that was going on. So it's like the one thing I will say, right, because I feel like we're we're really hitting on it and have hit it quite hard, is that what people are hoping for right now is that they can engender a top-down solution to all of these problems by romanticizing the past and emulating that behavior, and then thinking that you can emulate that behavior in this romanticized fashion, which is not reality, right? Whatever you think you're living is not what was going on back then. And that these ideas of a traditional society are really the best parts of a traditional society not happening on the same playing field. And then you have all of these people who think that, and most of them talking kind of like about this group who thinks that, Nick Fuentes has good ideas, not to keep talking about him, but that there is a top-down solution for this that is expedient, and that if we just stick to these, core principles that, white religious men were the backbone of this country, and if we all just are that, and that's the best thing about this country, and if we gain control of the government and implement change from the top down with using that metric, then everything is going to be better. Like, there are a group of people that really believe that, and that's total bullshit. And I say this all the time. I say that revisionist history is the god of Marxism, because you need to rewrite history and romanticize it and turn a hero into a monster and a monster into a justified monster, essentially, right? To create a new reality based on that false foundation, to justify your actions in the present and then sell people on this better version in the future. It's a total fucking scheme. And this has happened over and over and over again. Like, you mentioned, like, everything happens in cycles, like 2 generations later, right? Like, I saw a video today that the CCP put out of Mao Zedong talking to Xi Jinping's father and telling him how proud he was, and he was giving him control of the whole northwest of China. But in reality, actually, and this has been like Xi Jinping's redemption arc, and he's used this before, so it's funny that they're changing the narrative. But Mao threw Xi's father in prison and had him tortured to death. Like, that's the truth. And it's been Xi's redemption arc for him to wind up as the chairman of the CCP because of what happened to his dad. And they made a propaganda video recently showing this wonderful relationship between Mao and Xi's father for continuity purposes, so that Xi, it looks like this direct line that Xi has from him all the way back to Mao, and keeping with this total bullshit, right? And that's go ahead.
Well, I mean, I guess what I was going to say is I don't believe any history.
I mean, there's definitely a point there that,
like, I don't believe anything we read in our textbooks in schools anymore.
I think that
I don't believe anything the Chinese government says. That's for fucking sure. I don't believe that.
Oh, no, absolutely. Like, the CCP is totally
going to Puerto Rico and talking to an old fucking leathery abuelita at a bar, and her telling me firsthand what she experienced is about the most goddamn truthful thing you can do. I don't believe anything from anybody anymore, dude. Everybody's paid. Everybody's pushing a fucking narrative. The history books have all been written by the winners. So, if the Nazis would have won World War II, we'd be reading about how great they were. But instead we're reading about how great we are. And we fought a war for fucking, dude, we fought a war for banks. Again, another brother war. I mean, sure, we were, the men themselves fighting the wars are all fucking badass, and I respect them. I mean, I wasn't allowed into the military because criminal record, but I have the utmost respect for vets, always have. The people starting the wars are scumbags, but they're always, dude, if the wars that we're fighting now are unjust, if Vietnam was bad and Afghanistan was bad and Iraq was bad, who's to say Korea wasn't bad? Who's to say World War I, World War II weren't bad? Like, there's all these other nuances to it, and our history books just say, this is what's going on, and this is how you should think, because these people are bad.
Well, I'll say this, that you're right when you say that history is written by the victors. But fortunately, there are a lot of abuelitas and a lot of other people who have written their own accounts of things, and you can spend a lot of time reading books written by people who weren't famous and weren't generals, and didn't have any sort of control over the official narrative. They just put their thoughts in it, like people like Alexander Solzhenitsyn, right, who just wrote about his experiences. And you can wind up in a spot where you are intelligent enough through your own self-education to pick through the bullshit that you're talking about, because it definitely exists. You know, the things that I learned in AP US history in 10th grade definitely were not the reality of a lot of different things that I would eventually learn through my own sort of self-education. So you're right in that history is written by the victors, but the other part of the other thing I was getting at with this is that there's the lie that the winner tells at the end of the war about, you know, justifying their behavior and, you know, the outcomes of certain things and the material of certain things. And then there's the use of history as a tool specifically to create one narrative or another for your personal use, right? They're both narratives, but and they both hope to push a narrative, like these false histories, whichever one they are. But then there's like I think what I'm trying to say is there's a very wide sweeping brush with the victor history thing, and then what I'm getting at with having to use very specific language to rewrite specific, like the whole Xi father and Mao thing. You're painting with much finer detail there to create a narrative, right? And I think that those are two different things. They're both equally evil, I think, and they both drive total bullshit. But
dude, in a couple generations, we're not going to know anything is true. We already live in a post-truth age. AI and Wikipedia. I mean, dude, we're in 1984. We've been in it since probably since that guy wrote that book, Orwell, in the 50s or whatever. I'm not saying that one version of history is correct or another is. I'm saying none of them are real. None of them.
I get what you're saying.
They're all involved with the subjective human perception of what's happened of the people writing it. And, you know, my point in bringing up the going down to Puerto Rico, like, I don't give a fuck who wrote a book. No offense to what you're saying. I understand your point, and you got to have some point of reference. Otherwise, it becomes nihilistic and everything's meaningless and nothing's real, and we live in a simulation, and I'm floating through a black hole, shooting out the top of a storm cloud on Saturn. But what I'm getting at is that the only thing I believe is what I experience with my own five senses, what I see and feel and touch and smell and hear, and that's the whole point of shoe leather gonzo reporting, is that we're showing what's happening. And the fact that maybe I'm an insane person, but the fact that we show things that even make me look bad, I think cultivates a sensation of trust, and that's something that's largely missing from the world now. So that's all I was saying about how we do these documentaries. It's like with everything that's going on,
well, that's real.
You can't really trust it. USAID, AI, revisionist history, like you said, textbooks are fucking produced by people that don't even have American interests in their hearts. Rockefeller basically influenced the modern, education
Both Qatar
system.
And the CCP have a heavy hand in American education right now. It's fucking nuts, honestly. It's kind of wild. But no, you're right. What you're doing is real. That's real journalism. Is what you're talking about. Is showing even the bad and being honest about it. And you're trying to let the story speak for itself and the people on the ground doing it. That's really what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and it's in essence. You get the experience is true. We don't know if what the person's saying true or not, just the same way as we don't know if
you're letting people decide what they want to think about what you've presented them with. Exactly.
And you're getting it. It's a primary source, as opposed to, and some people consider books primary sources. I don't. I mean, dude, look at the Bible. How many times has it been changed?
Yeah, I mean, even
saying.
books have editors, right? I mean, how many times have you ever heard somebody who wrote a book talk about how like the editor wanted to leave this bit out? So I'm going to tell you in this interview that this got cut, you know, and this happened, and it should have totally stayed in the book, but it didn't because of whatever, you know. So yeah, I get what you're
dude. And then you got like, oh, it's a bestseller. It was on the New York Times bestseller. This politician wrote a book that's a bestseller. Yeah. Oh yeah, well, okay, I'm sure the publishing company bought 50,000 copies of the book so it would get up there so they could get this motherfucker reelected.
Exactly.
Anyways.
I completely understand the sentiment of where you're coming from with this type of like deconstructionist type of thinking. And I think that that's part of the point, because if you can unanchor people from what they think to be true of history, then it starts to become pervasive and you start to apply that type of deconstruction to like everything you think you know. I think COVID was a perfect example of that. We all lived through it together. And so then this idea of what things that people thought they understood about kind of like how vaccine technology worked, or at least the way it was presented to us, versus like how different medications are supposed to work. And then in real time, people started realizing that it was all built on narrative. So they started deconstructing everything they thought they understood about some of this stuff, which then all of a sudden led to now you've got like whole groups of people that are just like, well, I'm just going to, you know, all medicine is a myth now, and all vaccines are a myth. And then all of a sudden measles and mumps start popping up in the United States again because they threw all the baby out with the bathwater. And then that can also roll on into your religion. You know, you just start deconstructing everything because this idea of like, well, what I thought was true, maybe it's not. And I think that can be so dangerous to people's lives, because if you deconstruct just to do it without having a backstop of like, where am I going with this? Like, what am I trying to understand when I'm finished? Then, to your point, Gary, you wind up with this completely unanchored, nihilistic view of, well, I just can't trust anything, like whatsoever.
Well,
and I think the Bible is such a perfect example of that, because people do think that way about the Bible. And this is something that I enjoy pushing back on just a little bit, because it's like, that is one of the best examples of a primary written source that you can have that goes all the way back to the 1st century AD. We have copies of the Bible that go back to just a few decades after Jesus died from guys that walked with him that are more accurately translated to those original manuscripts than the earliest books that we have written about Julius Caesar. It's like just one example. And a lot of people don't know, because they just like, they see, oh, well, I see the NIV and I see the KJV and I see the New Living Translation, and they don't like, it's just not usually explained to them in a coherent fashion what the difference between a translation of the Bible is versus what a version of it is, and where those manuscripts come from, and so on and so forth. But it's like, that's just like one perfect example of how you can just de-anchor somebody from something that they thought they knew about a thing that they grew up with. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, can't trust this book anymore. Whop, like throw that out. And you know what I mean? Wow. And it gets, and I think that's part of what the media is trying to do to us. Because if you can get somebody in that deconstruction loop, suddenly they don't believe anything, or they'll believe everything.
Yeah. That's the real, you now become a blank page.
Right.
Yeah, that's why research is important. I mean, like we were talking about with medicine, people throw out all the, you know, the baby with the bathwater with medicine. Well, why? Why'd they do that? It wasn't just COVID.
No.
You know?
Sure.
It's like obesity rates, seed oils.
Yeah.
Like take the raw milk thing, for example. Why was raw milk banned in 1987? Well, you can basically pull the thread on that back to the swill milk scandal in New York with... like poor urban conditions for cows. They start squirting out like bluish milk. Babies are dying. And then Rockefeller comes in and he starts lobbying the governments. He's got connections at the University of Chicago. They ban raw milk there. It needs to be pasteurized. And then they pass a similar law. This is in like 1916. And then they pass a similar law in New York. And then he starts to there's even prior to that, he was interested in investing in the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906. That later becomes the FDA, and he basically, it wasn't about milk, dude. It was about monopolizing a dairy cartel so that he could maintain another monopoly after he knew they were going to break up Standard Oil. And funny enough, ironically, they named the first milk ordinance the Standard Milk Ordinance. I wonder why. People don't trust the fucking medicine industry.
Because they've lied to you forever.
and everything is based on treating symptoms with petroleum-derived medicines. Mm-hmm. It is a scam. There's a reason people are deconstructing it. It's bullshit. But it's not everything. That's why. Like what
there's
we're
a
talking
reason
about
why there's a reason why you begin to do it, because you've been lied to and you recognize you've been lied
so
to.
like what we were saying about how things worked better before, but only certain things. That's when I think the Bible talks about this, which I think it's called discernment. It's basically you have to use your own internal spirituality to determine what is and is not good, and I think that comes from religion, obviously, at least, but probably direct from God. I don't know, man. It's like you were talking about the secular stuff when people are like secular morality. Mm-hmm. What?
Yeah.
That doesn't even make sense to me.
You can't divorce it from God. You know, like I was getting at earlier, like Hume is a Scottish Enlightenment thinker, and he was not a believer in God. But the things he writes about, they are 100% rooted in Christian principle, and he provided, and it's like it's inescapable when you talk about it. Like you can't to talk about being
coming from Christianity. You mean?
Yeah, to talk about being a good man, it's like, okay, well, define good. Okay, well, where did man come from, right? It's like these words didn't just happen in a silo, right? Like, and so like I used Hume earlier to make a post about morality, and I offered it up as, and I portrayed him accurately that he was secular because he didn't believe in God, but and I only used it as an example to show that in the United States that you can believe in God or not believe in God. You have the freedom to do those things. And here are all of the things he said that are moral, and he's talking about morality because the big point he had is that, you know, human sympathy essentially is the driving mechanism, you know, behind a lot of what you do that is moral and good, because you have love for your fellow man, right? Which is again a Christian principle, right? And what love is and what love isn't is a whole nother conversation, right? When you talk about loving your fellow man, but you know, just using that example, like it is a joke to say like secular morality because it can't exist without God. Like there is no divestment.
Well, at the very least, without some sort of religious.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Or like cultural, or like some sort of backbone, which culturally, which I think is almost all based in a religion at some point, right?
Yeah.
All across the world. I mean.
Exactly. Like the human beings have been trying to say what is good and what isn't for a long time. There's a legal argument for this too. You talk about like malum in se and malum prohibitum, like what we agree is bad based on our moral guiding principle, and what we agree is bad because the law says it's bad. You know, like these are two different things, and which is there are things like we agree that like murder is bad. You know, what I mean? Like, I think humans agree for the most part,
and that's illegal. But like what they're doing in Puerto Rico, is technically legal, but it's kleptocracy.
It's wrong.
And it's horrendous.
Yes. Exactly. So human beings have been like trying to find a way to define good and moral separate of that forever, you know, but it is rooted back into those same principles. So, but when does your documentary come out?
Well, when does this come out? This comes out Saturday?
Saturday.
Yesterday. It came out yesterday.
Oh, fuck. Okay. So Friday.
Yes. Friday.
Which is the 4th of December, I think, right?
It would be the 5th.
The 5th of December. Okay.
Yeah. And then we got this Dearborn thing coming up after that. So yeah,
definitely want to talk to you about that too.
Yeah, we went on a whole
we did, bro.
Philosophical tangent. I haven't done a podcast in a while. I used to do a lot of podcasts, and then I honestly got kind of sick of talking to people.
I don't blame you.
So now
man.
I only really do them when I've got something really interesting to talk about, because I think, you know, podcasts are a little oversaturated now. I did
very
one
oversaturated
like 8 years ago, but well, if you don't have anything really interesting to talk about, and I think a large part of the reason that happened was because of comedians. Like every comedian all of a sudden was like, I'm going to make a podcast and be super funny, and everybody's going to think I'm the next Joe Rogan or Theo Vaughn or Tim Dillon, and then 95% of them, people realize that comedians are only funny on stage.
Right.
You know, and some of them are insufferable.
It's true.
And I worked heavily in comedy. I did a lot of work in the 2A community. I helped Michael Cargill. We went to the Supreme Court and we beat the ATF in the Cargill versus Garland.
Good.
Hell yeah.
Bump stock lawsuit. And then while I was doing that, I was working in comedy. So it was this weird dichotomy where I realized that comedians are almost worse than people in politics. In terms of, dude, some of them suck so bad. But that's because there's so many of them, you know?
Like politicians. There
Seriously,
are so many.
everybody's just... what the hell was I... Why was I going on about that?
You were saying how you used to do podcasts, but you stopped doing them because you got sick and tired of talking to people.
I just got sick of talking to people, dude. So now I only do them when I've got something that's that I'm reasonably, researched on, and yeah, it was nice to have a philosophical conversation though, because it's been a while.
It was, man. I didn't know it was going to go there, but Chris and I have a funny way of going there anyway. So
yeah,
something we talk about pretty often. So, but
we'll
hell yeah,
see
man.
what happens with the trajectory of the country, dude.
We'll see, man. We will see. There's no denying that.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, the doc comes out. It's all about the Puerto Rican power grid problem. Shows the living conditions. We named a lot of names in there too, even though I just named a bunch on here, and I'm probably gonna get shot in the back of the head. And then
I hope that doesn't happen.
Well, if it does, it does. It's I sort of took a big bite of this shit sandwich here with this one. A little bit bigger than I thought it was going to be, but that's okay because that's the job of a real journalist. You got to be willing to put your fucking nuts on the cutting board, you know? Mm-hmm. And I don't think anybody... Well, that's not true. There are a lot of people that do that. It just isn't maybe what it used to be, but then again, maybe it's always been a scam, like what we were talking about, like with USAID and stuff. I mean, so anyways, and then the Dearborn thing, yeah, and I'll come back on and talk about that too.
That would be awesome, dude.
Yeah.
It's dude, it was really a, what's the word here? Not eye-opening, but
like a trip, like my trip kind of thing.
It took me out of the bubble that I live within, and at least in terms of what my perception of what Muslims and what Islam is really like, and I think in a positive capacity, in terms of seeing that people, in my experience there, and maybe I didn't talk to somebody that might hate America, but I was just surprised that some of the, like this one kid told us that he thinks they should. I was like, hey, do you think that as with the call to prayer happening 5 times a day, do you think that they should play the national anthem? And he was like, yeah, no hesitation. He was like, he said it was sad that they don't do that anymore. So just interesting. There's
go on base here.
Just like with the marriage of Christianity and unbridled capitalism and American values, we're about to see in the coming decades, a very interesting similar assimilation happen with the Muslims. So that'll be interesting to watch unfold.
I hope there's assimilation. Put it that way. Yeah.
Well, it is an unstoppable thing. It will happen regardless, as it's happened with everyone. It's just interesting what the journey of it happening is, because dude, the American desire to chase the dollar is stronger than any religion on earth. That's why people move here.
Yeah. No, people, 100%. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. Well, yes, absolutely. I'll be gone for a week starting on Wednesday, but it would be dope to get you back on to talk about Dearborn, especially because it sounds like you've got a point of view. Well, first off, you do have a point of view that not a lot of other people have, but it sounds like you had some conversations that no one is expecting. So that'll be really cool to talk about. Yeah. All right, man. Well, tell everybody real quick where they can find you. Obviously, you said the documentary comes out on Friday, and we'll close out, and then I just need you to hang out once we stop recording so you can upload. That's it.
Yeah, no worries. So the doc is going to be out on the YouTube channel, which is just going to be Street Gonzo. Just go to YouTube and type in Street Gonzo, The title will probably be something like "Who's Robbing Puerto Rico" or "Who's Stealing the Puerto Rican Power Grid" or something like that. Just type in something Street Gonzo Power Pirates. I think that's going to be the tentative title. And then on Instagram, it's also Street Gonzo, and that's where like a lot of the clips are and stuff. I haven't been uploading much lately because I've been sick and working, but once we get this out, I'm going to go back to posting a ton of stuff. And yeah, I think that about covers it.
Sick, bro. Well, I appreciate your time, man, and we will talk to you soon.
Cool. Thanks for having me.